Welcome to Midland Gliding Club. This video is for people who are familiar with gliding operations at other sites and who are visiting the club for the first time. Some aspects of the operation at the club are different from how many clubs operate, and this video is designed to make you familiar with those differences. The biggest difference is probably that we operate a retrieve winch system. During a launch, the main winch cable pulls out a smaller cable attached to the parachute, which is then used to pull the main cable back by the retrieve winch. This means that there is always a cable between the main winch and retrieve winch. You should never walk in front of the retrieve winch if the cable is live. At the launch point, you must remain behind the yellow cage when a launch is taking place. It is there to protect you if the cable breaks. The launch process at the launch point is that the person putting the cable onto the glider must be the person who gives the signal to take up slack. The retrieve winch driver cannot see if someone is crouching down attaching the cable, so we must be certain that the person has moved out of the way before commencing the launch. They must check all clear above and behind, and in front, before signaling. They do not have to give an all-out signal. With our system, the retrieve winch driver decides when to give the all-out to the main winch. Ideally, a third person should run with the wing, so that this is the only thing they are doing. We always run with the wing furthest from the retrieve winch to keep the wing runner away from the retrieve cable. Gliders must be launched with the wingtip next to the cone to gain maximum separation from the cable. You must not launch from more than a few feet in front of the cone. There is a possibility of the retrieve cable being picked up by the wing if you do. With good teamwork, we can launch gliders every 2 or 3 minutes. The usual delays are from pilots not being ready when the cable arrives, so make sure you are strapped in with all checks done when you get to the front of the launch queue. We always do positive control checks at the launch point before the first flight of the day as well as during the DI. Please make sure these are done before you get to the front of the launch queue. Cable release checks are also required. No checks, no launch. If you wish to drive the retrieve winch, please watch the video called Launch Point Video, which explains the operation in detail. We have several rights of way across the airfield that are used by walkers, cyclists, and horse riders, so we must always be mindful to keep them safe and keep a good lookout in front of the launch point as well as behind. When landing to the north, the approach is over a public footpath. You must be high enough over the path as walkers and mountain bikers can appear unexpectedly. We do not launch if there is a horse rider close to the airfield. Be particularly mindful to keep an eye out for horse riders if you are flying low on the ridge, and move away from the ridge if you spot any. Do not fly below ridge height in front of the hang glider field. They cannot see you when taking off, so it stops them flying. We can operate in strong winds, which allows for some great flying on the ridge, but we have to take certain precautions in strong winds. In a 30-knot wind, a carelessly handled glider will take off on its own, which never ends well. When towing out, have someone strapped in the glider bracing the controls and ready to use the wheel brake if necessary. Turn the glider across the wind to get in and out. Do not get out until there is someone else ready to get in. Always have someone holding the canopies while they are open. On strong wind days, we operate a short west launch. This is a very short cable run across the airfield with no retrieve cable. This is basically a powered bungee launch. You will only gain around 200 feet and will come off the launch very fast. Because you are never in a position of the cable pulling the glider downwards, as it does in the top third of the normal launch, you do not need to be too concerned about overspeeding on the launch. When the winch chops the power, lower the nose and push forward into the ridge lift, and then turn left along the ridge. If you are flying on the ridge, remember that you must always turn away from the ridge, no exceptions. This includes your turn on to downwind. If you have left it too late to do a 270-degree clearing turn onto downwind, then land in the valley rather than turning downwind towards the ridge. Remember, the ridge rules are to overtake a slower glider between the glider and the ridge, because you know the glider will not turn towards you. We operate a traffic system on the ridge. Going north, you must be east of the road at the bottom of the ridge. Going south, you must be west of it. That way you should never be head-on to another glider. Remember that if you do meet a glider head-on whilst ridge soaring, the glider with the ridge on the left gives way by turning to the right. The glider with the ridge on the right cannot turn right because they cannot turn towards the ridge. Landing on a strong wind day can be challenging. You will lose a lot of speed in the wind gradient, so you must maintain speed on the approach. In a 30-knot wind, your approach speed may need to be around 70 knots. There are two types of radio used on the airfield, a CB radio that is used to communicate on the ground, and an airband radio used to communicate with and between aircraft. There is a CB radio in all the vehicles and winches, and you can use this to talk to the other vehicles on the airfield. The CB radio relays the audio signal from the signal lamps, so if you hear a slow beep from the radio, it means a launch is taking place. You must use an airband radio to make a downwind call when you are starting your circuit. We use Vitaras for moving gliders around the airfield. When towing gliders, the Vitara must be in low ratio and in first gear. At 1000 revs it will move at a gentle walking pace. There must be someone walking in front of the wing to stop the glider overrunning. Have the windows open so you can hear any instructions from the people with the glider. They have a better view of the sky and are more likely to see an approaching glider. An important part of our safety culture is a no-blame reporting system. Accidents and incidents rarely happen out of the blue, so if we can see a pattern emerging that may eventually lead to something more serious, we may be able to nip it in the bud and prevent future problems. This isn't about blaming anyone or getting people in trouble, it's just trying to see patterns emerging and changing what we do to prevent a situation where someone gets away with something a few times, then doesn't get away with it. What we would prefer not to do is learn from our mistakes after we have made them, and then take remedial action to prevent them happening again. It's much cheaper and less time-consuming to not make the mistake in the first place because we have seen it coming and already carried out the remedial action. We can only do this with feedback from members about incidents that are happening on the field that we got away with. If you see anything that is a cause for concern, it's very easy to report it. There are QR codes in the clubhouse to allow you to access the incident reporting form or ask any club member. You don't have to give your name if you don't want to. The form is also on the website. The launch point is often busy, and visiting pilots should ensure they source safety information from a duty instructor, the launch director, or the retrieve winch operator. Essential information may include current circuit direction and preferred landing areas, as well as whether launching requires laying off to prevent the cable drifting into a potentially dangerous area. All of this information is available on the website under the Visitors tab. We aim to give visitors a great experience and keep everyone safe. If you are unsure of anything, please don't be afraid to ask a club member. Stay safe and have a great day.